Welcome to the third day of the 18th Vermont Organics Recycling Summit, organized by the Composting Association of Vermont in partnership with the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources. I'm Natasha Duarte, the director of the Composting Association of Vermont. This year's summit is being held as a kickoff event for International Compost Awareness Week, which starts this Sunday, May 5th. And it's the largest and most comprehensive education initiative of the composting industry. The theme this year is Compost, Nature's Climate Champion. And I just want to draw some attention to this poster here on the right. This is from a student at the University of Vermont. As part of Dr. Debner's Composting Ecology and Management class, the students every year create their own versions of International Compost Awareness Week posters. They are all on a gallery at compostingvermont.org/VORS. And if you click on those individual images, you can also read the students' inspiration for their poster creation and their interpretation of the theme. So we've really been enjoying this collaboration with the University of Vermont over the last couple of years and love to highlight their work. I also want to give huge thanks to all of our sponsors and exhibitors this year, without whom we could not be offering this full week program with the entire virtual program available free of cost. So we really appreciate their support. We have perennial sponsors and a handful of new sponsors this year as well. Those include Community Bank, Eco Products, Prohibition Pig Brewery, Addison County Solid Waste Management District, AgriLab Technologies, Casella, Food Cycler, Nature Cycle, Vermont Natural Ag Products, Viably, CV Compost, the Vermont Produce Program from the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and Woods and Laboratories. So huge thanks. Give them some virtual love this morning for helping us all come together for this program. As I said, we're on day 3. It's Wednesday, May 1st, and we're at the first session of the day, which is Strategies for Success with Compostable Products, Education, Technology, and Training. And we have a moderator today, Elly Ventura, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen while I just say that Elly used to be in Vermont and was a member of my board of directors for the Composting Association of Vermont. She still is very involved, and we keep trying to pull her in and have her engaged up here in the Northeast. And so really appreciate her sharing what we do in Vermont with the rest of the world, and also helping organize sessions to bring what's going on in other parts of the world back to Vermont so we can all learn together. And so with that, Elly, I'm just going to go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thank you, Natasha. Good morning, everyone. I am Elly Ventura, Resource Recovery Manager for Centric, which is a manufacturer of certified compostable food service products. So this session is particularly interesting to me. It is my honor to be with you today to help kick off International Compost Awareness Week with one of my favorite events, VORS. So I've been involved with VORS as either an attendee or as helping to plan for over 10 years. So it is really one of my favorites, and I will continue to stay involved, Natasha, as long as you will still want me and welcome me. So we are very grateful to have all of you with us today for this star-studded panel of composting professionals. You are in for a real treat this morning as we learn from our presenters about strategies for success with compostable products. Our panelists span from coast to coast and will share best practices to safeguard against unintended contamination from procurement to piles. It is really a privilege for me to facilitate this panel with some of my favorite people and industry influencers this morning: David, Sashti, Toby, and Linda. And maybe you ran into some of them at the in-person event on Monday if you were lucky enough to be able to attend. So we are going to do this panel in sort of 3 sessions this morning, and we're going to follow each session, each presentation with a little Q&A. Hopefully we'll have time at the end for a larger dialogue and more Q&A as well. So I'm going to introduce each of our speakers to start each section of the panel. Please use the Q&A box to type in, or the chat box, I guess we're not doing Q&A, the chat box to put questions in as they come to you during the presentation, and then we'll get to those at the end. And then we may even be able to have you come off mute and really do a little bit more dialogue and engagement before we wrap up here today. So David and Sashti are going to get us started. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them before we turn it over. David Velez Alexander is visiting Vermont right now from Southern California, where he founded and operates TAWA Compost Food Rescue. He describes himself as a serial entrepreneur who started selling popsicles when he was 8, then dabbled in a bicycle business, manufacturing tools and unobtainable vintage bike components, and then found his way to food rescue, which makes perfect sense. After volunteering with Food Forward and LA Compost, David realized there was a disconnect between food rescue and the composting process, and this is where his story begins with us today. Sashti Balasundaram is visiting Vermont right now from upstate New York. He began his career as a community composter in Brooklyn, New York, and expanded his skills in academia, nonprofit, and government sectors with over 15 years of experience in organic waste management, recycling, and composting. He became an entrepreneur to develop technology, improving operations with efficiencies in digital data collection and remote monitoring of composting piles. WeRadiate is the name of his business. And with WeRadiate, he advises and strategizes with local governments to initiate or expand organics waste programs. Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for being with us today. And it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Vermont. I love you. Thanks for having me. All right. Good morning, everyone. So my name is David Velez, and I'm the founder of the Compost Research Center in Los Angeles. The main reason why I founded this place was to put to the test all these pieces that we say, can it be compost? It cannot be composted. So just to crush those myths, I created this place. So some of the features that we do at the Compost Research Center, we do controlled traceable feedstocks, which are all pre-consumer goods, makes it really easy to replicate the experiment, meaning that we could even trace what farm the food came from. All the wood products, we could trace back to where the area where the wood was extracted, the actual tree that went in there. So things like that. We specialize also like in having same size particles for even results at the end. So in this study, it aims to develop and implement a standardized composting methodology for composting products without the use of water. In California, we have a water shortage. It doesn't really make sense to use water for composting, which a lot of people do for the composting process. However, that presents certain challenges in decomposing these products. Compostable products can function as a reliable feedstock with complete traceability throughout the entire supply chain, meaning that the manufacturer ultimately knows where the resin was grown. Like if it was made out of wheat or out of sugar, it's traceable. So any possible contamination, and I'm talking about like, it could be like more like a chemical contamination, not like a contamination in the compost, like a plastic in the compost, more like a chemical PFAS or whatever, we could kind of trace it back and make it more viable to fix it in the long run. So for this experiment, I actually did 2 different runs. It was a single run with 2 different methods. As you can see, the bag there, that's actually the same recipe that went into the windrow. As you can see on the side, that's the recipe used. And why was that? It was mainly to have different conditions on the bag than on the windrow, because on the bag, you're going to have more anaerobic conditions that you would do in the windrow. So this is the type of experiments that I like to do to kind of save time. You know, field testing, it's been going on for quite 5 years, right? But if you don't have anything to compare it to, it'll take a long time for you to learn that, like the differences. For example, in this one with aerobic and anaerobic conditions. I'll show you what we learned in the next 3 slides. So practically what you're seeing here are our results within a 6-month period. You can see the clamshells, PLA cups, CPLA cups. CPLA cups, for those of you that are not familiar, they're crystallized PLA, which is practically like the same cup, but it has undergone a heating process that would actually tighten the PLA, and it'll make it more resistant to heat. So for this actual pile, it was highly acidic, all lemons, cactus. We used some garden branches for aeration pockets. And as you can see, within like a week, we already had a high disintegration progress on the clamshell. The mold just started eating it away. By the, sorry about that. By December, the PLA cups, even though they were stacked, they were already breaking up. Typically PLA cups, even if you leave them out, they start like shrinking. If you leave them in your car, it's like 90 degrees, they'll start shrinking. As you can see at the end of the experiment, we pretty much only had partial PLA cup pieces, and CPLA cup, we had like really no success in breaking it down. So these are the items we tested. This is how they look full versus how they would be in a shredded setting. Mind you, we use a small shredder, home shredder, but it is possible for industrial facilities to actually get an attachment for industrial shredders that will enable them to shred these items if they wanted to. So what we learned on this study, it is that on the clamshell, which is made of sugarcane fiber, sugarcane pulp, is that what breaks them down effectively? Well, either a cold or hot process will break them effectively, which makes it suitable for worm composting. It could be in tumbler composting. So it could work really well for a home composting setting. And also it could go into anaerobic conditions. It could be in anaerobic conditions. So that's why I said it goes in a tumbler. It'll still break down. It is primarily the moisture that helps it break down. So it does need a high moisture content. So whether you're adding water or just having high moisture, it'll still work. With the PLA cup, anything over 90, 99 degrees Fahrenheit, specifically aerobic conditions are what will break down the PLA. In certain anaerobic conditions, like certain anaerobic digesters at a certain temperature, they will still break PLA as well. PLA, in order to break down, needs constant heat. So no adding cold water. If your process requires adding water to the pile, if it's cold, it will stop the disintegration of the PLA. For the CPLA lid, as I said, the breakability of it, the compostability of it is unknown at the moment because it was unsuccessful. Coffee cup, also hot, cold, aerobic, anaerobic conditions, high moisture content. If it's dry, it will not break down. Same thing with the clamshell with sugar pulp, it will not break down. And you might say, well, I'm not only gonna get like those type of items in my facility, I'm gonna get all of them. So this is pretty much what compostable packaging looks in the wild. That's like mixed bamboo plates with bamboo cutlery, cups, plates. So it kind of looks like mulch. And what I do in my facility, I have different clients, but we have this type of tow. We actually have people separated from the food waste and it gets chipped. Obviously, we do charge more to take in compostable products because it requires that extra labor. So for example, on this report, we can see that this company dropped off this food waste and they brought us random compostable products. So we put an under review, and obviously that company, they want to work at a really high, quality, or they want to have high quality work. So when I said under review, they're like, no, we want you to say that it's composted. And I said, you don't have any products that are being already certified by our facility. So we cannot put that. It's under review. It has to undergo the process. And then we'll give you a second letter. That is to have transparency and trust among their clients with them.
So David's battery, I think, just minimized. So I will just try to share my screen right now. You could hear David in the background. We're in the same facility right now. So I will present my screen. Great. Cool. So Natasha's on, and maybe I'll just go, if that's okay, Elly, and maybe I'll try to do mine. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Great backup, Sashti. Well done.
Yeah. So no worries. There's a couple of slides left for David, but essentially I'll let him finish those results. So I will continue with mine. So essentially, how did David figure out that we need high temperatures or even moisture levels or relative humidity levels? So he has been using our equipment during this presentation, during this research over those past couple of months. And I'll maybe start with who we are as an entity, and then I'll go back and forth. So our company is WeRadiate. We've been around for about 5 years. Our whole theme is, can we revive degraded soil? And we do that through organics recycling technology and some of our services. And then I'll sort of go back. So what David sort of found, and this is a facility of his, he has actually 2 sites in Los Angeles that he's working on. One of them is a research facility. So on the photo above is one of our units. So that is sort of a handheld 3-foot sensor. It's a digital remote sensor. And then it connects with what we're using as radio frequencies. And a lot of these locations, Wi-Fi or cellular is not great. You're probably aware, if you go outside of your home, Wi-Fi is very poor. If you go into a rural community, cellular data might be poor as well. So we're using radio signals. Radio is essentially what it is. It's you're listening to music in your own car, listening while you're driving, and that is sort of the frequency that we're tapping into to collect, connect, and share this data from a compost pile digitally. So on the bottom of that photo is sort of a dashboard that we've created specifically for David at TAWA Research Lab. At the moment, there is a single temperature unit on site, and you could see sort of the data from November 18th last year up until maybe December 15th. And you could see it actually hit PFRP levels. They were on the left-hand side is the Fahrenheit, and on the x-axis is the date. So you could see the time, you could see the min, max, average, and current temperature. So using that information, we could sort of understand when and how long it takes for these items to break down by both observation and legit tangible data. I'll talk more about these, but these are essentially what was in the field. So with in terms of WeRadiate, we have a dual temperature sensor that is about 3 feet in height. We're actually building them on the East Coast in New York State. New York State has been supporting us with local manufacturing. They've been a wonderful partner. And this is a dual temperature on the left-hand side, tracking data from the bottom tip, which is about 36 inches, and then also midway at 18 inches. In this facility, not David's, but we've seen sites, even in an 18-inch differential, we've seen about the 20, 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit differential, even in that 18-inch vertical space. So we could see just these piles not necessarily being uniform, but very homogeneous. Based on a lot of feedback, we're also now developing relative humidity plus temperature, and a couple of locations are now utilizing this as well. So we see this as a new innovation of ours where we're collecting relative humidity, which is sort of the water vapor in a compost piles. So that's sort of a different angle of collecting that important data. So happy to discuss further with you what that looks like. So we work with researchers, we work with facilities, we work with businesses, we work with compost operators, and our whole end goal is, can we make the soil healthier and richer, improve ecosystem health? So with David, he had a really intriguing opportunity. Can we do research on the site with compostable packaging, which is unique to us, and also David needed data. So that's sort of how we meshed together on this partnership. So what science and data sort of helps us understand the process further. Instead of just manual data tracking, you have to be on site. We realized that remote monitoring, you could really see better understanding of pile health and sort of quality of what is happening on site. So this is essentially what you do. You essentially leave the unit in the pile, you let it be, regardless of the environmental conditions. In sunny LA, it could live outdoors. In snowy Vermont, it could live outdoors. It's not an issue. This is also lived in blizzard conditions in Buffalo, New York. So we're comfortable to leave them outside. And then essentially through radio frequency, you could see this information on your mobile device, laptop, desktop, and all. That's sort of the screen on the right-hand side.
Sashti
So-
and David, we're at 5 minutes.
5 minutes, great. That's enough time. So with this, David could see multiple locations all together. So we could have multiple sensors. We could show sort of trends in the space. David could also be alerted if it's getting too hot or if relative humidity is getting too low. So that's sort of the basic understanding of what's happening. So here, David and I are at his research facility with a single temperature unit. He's able to sort of see that software information. And then with the compostable packaging, understand what fluctuations are happening, what operational or feedstock ratios need to occur to sort of improve the processing and compostability of those products. Cool. So with David's site, specifically the next couple of slides. So David is in LA County, but somehow David chose a facility that was pretty remote and also lacked electricity. So he found a location that was fairly remote and that exists in LA County. Not everything is urban in that space. So the challenge is a remote location. It lacked electricity. These other concerns was, how do we maintain the device from afar? I have not actually seen the site in person. I was not able to visit it, but we were able to figure out how to actually create and collect data without being there on the ground. And I'll share the solutions that actually we were able to figure out and collect it. So this is actually one of the piles here. You could see on the bottom of that sort of compost pile, some of the lemons, as well as some of maybe the compostable packaging. It looks like bamboo straws, looks like maybe some PLAs that are mixed in. Obviously, there's a lot going on in that photo, and you could see one of our units here. So you can see this is actually, I have it in my hand. I'll try to unblur my screen, but this is a unit. You essentially stick it in the ground, leave it there, don't touch it until you need to aerate it. Then you could obviously pull it out so you don't run it over with an equipment, but it lives in those piles, and that's what's collecting that information in that specific location. So what we were able to do. So since he was in a remote location, that's why we're using radio frequencies to collect, share, and monitor that information. Second, this is pretty innovative for us. We were able to utilize solar. So we had a small solar panel set up, and sunny LA was perfect location for this pilot. So we've been able to actually collect, monitor information in really remote locations just using solar. So that's been a really wonderful add-on. So what does updated firmware mean? Let's say David's doing a new pile or a new batch. and he wants more frequent information, well, we could collect data maybe every 30 minutes or every 1 hour without manually having to change the code. So I'm here on the East Coast, I could essentially write a code, and that would change all the way to the West Coast to maybe say, hey, the first 10 days, I want to collect data more frequently. And the last 20 days, I could just do it 3 or 4 times a day. So that updated information can be shared pretty seamlessly remotely. And then since I was not there on site, I actually created a bunch of videos and tutorials to help David understand what to do, how to set it up. And education and learning is important for us as a entity, but we realize that also supports facilities on the ground too. This is sort of a couple of results collected, but with the time remaining, you could see that the temperature got up to 153 degrees Fahrenheit over that specific time period, and average was about 127. We would love to repeat this, and these are sort of next steps of this research, is to conduct a long-term field study. How does ambient weather, how does seasonal fluctuations actually affect the breakdown of these products? We want to also investigate maybe environmental conditions, so temperature, humidity, sunlight exposure. And with sort of some of those variables, we want to be able to use different pieces of equipment. So that's sort of where the dual temperature can come in, or the relative humidity can come in, to really pinpoint at what levels and at what rates items can disintegrate. So our goal here with David is, can we develop a standard methodology for specific compostable packaging? David had mentioned maybe there could be, can this be thought of as a viable feedstock? If there's a number of entities and companies creating these items, can we maybe think about this as a feedstock? I know that is a big question mark here, but David had mentioned that, so I wanted to share that as an interesting opportunity. And also think about how do we collect both technology and sort of David's services sort of in the package together so we could do more of this research. Elly, I think this is us. So I know, if we have 1 or 2 minutes, I'm not sure if David is still available, but this is us. Please feel free to contact WeRadiate.com, TAWAcompost.com, and that's our information here. And this is this is us throwing mulch in one of David's facilities.
That's us, young and wild, 2 years ago. So, yes, I actually need to finish my slides. Thank you.
So we were right here, David.
Yes.
So we have about 2 slides left.
So yeah, like I was mentioning in this report, we do provide a number of reference for them to actually get a report back and show to their client. That number is actually even published in our website, so people could see that it actually went through us, and it is attached to that actual report. Can we go to the next slide, please? So how do I know my PLA is breaking down? PLA has stages of disintegration. First, it goes in deformation. Second, it starts changing color into like a white, solid white. So it would actually turn solid white. And that's how you know it already went to the second stage. The third stage of decomposition, it shatters, and it just keeps shattering like through the process. It's very interesting because a lot of people, they're like, well, I don't know if it's breaking down. Well, there you go. That's how you know. So can we move to the second one, to the next one, please? So these are actually the results at hand of our collected data for this experiment. And so pretty much by putting two different methods, the bag in the windrow, having one more anaerobic, one being aerobic, we were able to save so many field testing in like, is this going to work in this? Is this going to work in that? We closed that gap in 6 weeks. And those are the types of experiments we do at the Compost Research Center. So yeah, let me see. Give me 1 second. All right, can you move to the next one? Oh, Okay, yes, that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. Can you please roll to, yeah. So let us know if you do have any questions. How can you actually start receiving compostables, and how can it be beneficial to your facility rather than becoming a contamination? It does require building some type of infrastructure, but it could be very beneficial economically to you and to the quality of your compost to have this infrastructure set up, especially if you're getting compostable products from like everywhere. It takes time. However, it's something that could really work for everyone. We're already doing it at our site and we're benefiting from it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, both of you. And congratulations on navigating Vermont's internet bandwidth. You did a great, great job. Great job troubleshooting that. So I think we'll give it, there aren't any questions in the chat right now, but I'm going to give it another 30 seconds. Looks like Heather, if you want to go ahead and come off mute and ask your question.
I am sorry, wet head, just got out of the shower because, as David knows, it's early here on the West Coast. Heather Trim, Zero Waste Washington in Seattle. That was really interesting. Thank you both. And I'm wondering, David, if you have also started to test a wider range of materials, especially what I'm hearing concerns about are things like the thicker utensils, like forks and knives and stuff, the thicker PLA type of products. Have you done any of those yet? And if not, are you planning to do things like that?
Yes, so I've done random tests with stuff like the potato ones. As I said before, it just depends on the condition of your pile, what it disintegrates in it or not. So for a lot of the bioplastics, once you add in cold water to the process, it'll stop the disintegration of it. That's why for a lot of like community composters that are making like the hand compost and everything, and they add in the water, as soon as that cold water touches the product, that's it. But if you have a constant heat type of setting, then it, or like even like an in-vessel system, then it should work. So yes, I am planning to do more. I hope that more compostable product packaging people actually want to get these type of studies, so this information could be out there. The idea is that once we study them at the research center, we collect that data, then composters have a reference that they could say like, oh, that could work for me. Maybe I recommend it. Maybe you know, you become like an actual, so some people, they haul away food waste from restaurants, then you're actually promoting the product that works with your pile. You eliminate contamination completely.
Thanks, David. Carrie will take yours and then we will move on to Toby.
Right, thanks. Thanks, Elly, and thanks, Sashti and David. Great to see you guys and fascinating talk. I was going to ask, actually, when I put my hand up, I was going to ask Sashti a question about relative humidity, but David's answer to the last question actually raised a different question, which is my understanding in talking to a lot of PLA manufacturers was that once the disintegration started, you made the comment that if you put cold water on a process that's decomposing, it'll stop the decomposition. And that was not my understanding. My understanding is that once, at least for PLA, once the decomposition has started, bringing it back to bring the lower temperatures will not stop it. It'll slow it down, but it will continue to break down even at ambient temperatures, even in soil. So that's a really critical question because it's the difference between compostable products, you know, becoming microplastics and not, basically, which is a really critical question. So I felt I had answered that question, but now you're raising a question that maybe that's not true or not true in all cases, or maybe it's different among different compostable products, which there are a huge variety.
Right.
So I think it's really important research. I just want to quick ask Sashti, you can think about that.
I already have it.
The question of measuring relative humidity versus moisture content. Those two things are not exactly the same, right? You could actually have a fairly dry pile, but have relative humidity interstitially be higher. And so I'm not sure. I'm wondering if you've done research or you've been able to correlate moisture content and relative humidity, which will be also really different at different temperatures. So lots to think about, lots great, like I said, always more to learn here. So thanks.
Yes. So Sashti, are you gonna answer that? Are
You
gonna
go
be there?
first, David, for the first one, if we have time, if Elly's okay for
Sure.
that.
So yes, you're right. I should
In
be
less
more
than a minute, you
specific.
guys. Less than
Huh?
a minute. Quick.
Oh yes. So yes, I should be more specific that it doesn't completely stop it, but it slows it down by a lot. So if you have a process that is a 2-month process, it will not finish at the same time because you had already added water. So yes, it's also depending on the length of time of your process. So now if your process is 8 months and you're doing that repeatedly, yes, it's more likely that the compostable would break. Mm-hmm.
Cool, and I'll go next. In terms of, and you've probably seen this, Carrie, in the composters out there, even with temperature, you probably see even centimeters or inches away, temperature variation can fluctuate dramatically. So that could also be the case, but the difference in sort of your answer, moisture is probably that liquid that is maybe as a leachate or in, on outside piles. What we're doing is collecting that vapor, which is sort of that water vapor within those piles, and that's the sensor in terms of relative humidity that we're tracking and monitoring. So we want to see what is that threshold that could be helpful in terms of if it's too dry or too wet. So that's sort of the difference in terms of moisture is a liquid, water vapor and relative humidity is obviously it's sort of that gas. So that I would say that's sort of the difference between there. Happy to chat further, I know, but Elly, thank you. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Yes, thank you so much.
Great job, you guys. And research always makes us ask more questions. So it's part of the reason we do it, right? All right, you can continue to put questions for David and Sashti in the chat box, but right now I'm excited to introduce Toby Alves, who works as a product and zero waste specialist with Eco Products. While our companies, Centric and Eco Products, are often seen as competitors in the packaging space, I consider Toby a really, really dear friend and an industry advocate. He's passionate about developing successful post-consumer food scrap and composting programs. He's earned his dirt cred, if you will, by selling soil amendments, hauling and composting food scraps, and operating his family-run diversified farm currently in the Western Mountains of Maine. Toby holds a Bachelor of Science in Horticulture and Agronomy from UNH and is going to introduce us to the CERC program. All right, Toby, take it away.
Geez, thanks, Elly. I'm wiping away the tears, but yes, I appreciate the invite and great to be here with VORS. Thank you, everybody, for joining us virtually and everybody who came by for the in-person event. And as Elly mentioned, we operate in the same space. I wouldn't say we're competitors either. We're all working towards a similar goal, and it's critically important for us that we're welcomed at these events. This is the composters. This is the end of the line. I'm going to apologize for I don't have a lot of pictures like David and Sashti had. I got a lot of words, but it's we're trying to, with this CERC program, which I'll get into. We're tackling a huge problem, right? And I think with this group, I can throw out a few, I wouldn't say hypotheticals, but just, theories. When we're in these rooms, oftentimes we're associated with, and we use the term waste diversion often, and sometimes folks are thinking composting and waste diversion and how do they go together? And I've been doing this for a few decades, and I think they all go together. When we look at the waste characterization studies that are being conducted, the amount of organics that are in the waste stream are incredible. There's enough work for all of us to go around. I watch the young people who are coming into the industry, or even folks who are transitioning into the industry. There's so much opportunity, so many problems to solve, and it's super exciting. And also, as Elly had mentioned, my dirt cred. I started out composting on a golf course. Leaf and yard waste and some grass. Hopefully, not too much grass. Because that smell is awful. And that started my fascination. And then I worked in the biosolids world. Huge problem, lots of people working on it, and nobody really wants to talk about it, so it's like you have those bits, and then you get into food scraps and composting. When you say composting now, everybody's like, yeah, it's great, it's awesome, and now we're trying to solve these problems. So that's a little bit, not my spiel, but it's I think those are the big questions we're trying to answer. So the CERC program, developed by Eco Products, controls intended to remove contamination. We kicked around reduce contamination, and what we learned is composters want contamination removed. They don't want a little bit, they want none. Zero tolerance policy, right? So how do we help them get there? Well, let me see if I can, oh, there we go. My Eco Products pitch, green is all we do. It truly is painful to us when we either we're not chinning the bar in regards to the products we produce, or we're not doing our part to help contamination out. That's where programs like CERT come from. There's in Elly's company, there's many folks who are doing like what I do. We have 5 people on our team, plus folks at our headquarters in Boulder, all working on this every day, because it's critical for us to have a place for these products to go. Graphic slides, everybody. I am sorry, but contamination from non-compostable materials, significant challenges, and has eroded composter confidence across the country. These pictures are from Colorado, but I know Dan has shared similar pictures from Green Mountain in the Burlington market. This is what folks are getting at their compost facilities, and this is what we need to address, what we need to avoid. I will say there's different forms of contamination. Right. So we have, you look at this, you have glass bottles, you have metal cans, you have lawnmowers, you have boots, you have socks, you have all kinds of things. Then you have a subset of that. You have packaging, you have traditional plastic packaging. That's not going to break down. Carrie brought up microplastics. It's going to cause big problems as it starts to degrade. Then we get into compostable food serviceware. We still have contamination in compostable food service, where at the in-person event, there was, rightfully so, a product with no markings, no third-party certifications, other than it looks like a fiber plate, which gives a lot of consumers that good, warm feeling, but we have no idea what's in that. And that's what we have to avoid that's just within the compostable food service products arena. So we have all this contamination. Again, controls intended to remove contamination. It's hopefully that'll stick with you, and you can find all this stuff on the Eco Products website. You can actually, if you search CERC and Eco Products, you'll be able to find some information on this. There's a lot of tools. There's more documents that explain the program, and there you can actually download the worksheet, which I'll get to in a moment. So what is CERC? Operator level verification program designed to systematically address contamination. Tons of words, right? But we're working on a system. We want to control and mitigate contamination from non-compostable materials before it gets to the compost facility. I personally, and I think I can speak for my company, we don't feel that it's the composter's responsibility to figure out how to remove contamination once it's arrived at their site. We have to figure out how to get it out of there before it goes in the cart and gets to their facility. That being, that's how we're going to increase the composter confidence. And we'd like to demonstrate, and we have some early on success operating, implementing the program and seeing that we've reduced the contamination in an array of food service environments, right? So Eco Products has been doing this for many years, couple decades, and we're talking festivals, concerts, college campuses, business and industry, corporate cafeterias, all the way down to your local coffee shop. Maybe you're buying something off the shelf. I think that'll come up in Linda's slides also. But how do we come up with a system that we can use in all these different environments? And we think we've come up with a pretty good tool. It's customizable. It can be used at the it's basically it's designed to be used at the operator, or in the composter world, the generator level. So the restaurant that you patronize, the college that you attend, your office building, for example. We saw some interesting things at the state office building in Vermont where, these are things that we could help with this program, because there's a lot of pieces to this, right? So you've got procurement. Where are we buying our things from? How do we buy them? How do we know we're buying the proper things? This is where our team can help. we can help guide that process, make sure that you're purchasing products that could go to a facility provided they accept compostable food serviceware. Operations, this is at the food service level. Who's serving the food? Who's, are the employees trained? Are there processes in place to make sure non-compostable items don't get set out where compostable items have been traditionally used? For picture a plate switch, or all of a sudden, a case of non-compostable polystyrene forks come in. What control is in place to make sure that those don't end up getting to the point where the consumer is going to use it? The consumer is new to this, or almost worse, has been trained to put that in the compost bin. Now that fork goes in the compost bin that's not compostable. These are the challenges, and I'm getting exhausted talking about it already, because you can see all the parts, and it's like, what we need is we're hoping to design a system where we get buy-in from all the various stakeholders before the composters have to get involved. So communication, signage, good signage, green team meetings, letting folks know maybe we're working towards diverting our post-consumer food scraps, but we're not there yet. Please, let us know how we could do better in our cafeteria setting or at our college campus dining facility. We call this whole thing the scorecard. It's pretty intense. It's intentionally exhaustive. It's meant to have everything that you possibly could need for any venue, and then you pull and pick and take what you need for each particular venue. And it can be implemented at ground zero. It can be implemented in the instance for, in Vermont, let's say you've got a market like Burlington, where back in the day, we were able to send compostable food serviceware to the compost facility until that privilege was revoked because we couldn't control the contamination. This tool is, hopefully we can go back to some of these operators. We can find committed generators that will help us with this, to make sure that we can open those doors back up, or keep the doors open at the facilities that are comfortable processing these products. These are the various stakeholders, various folks that are involved. Again, I think the composters, other than and this will be in some of the questions, this should protect all the way down to the composter end. And also it should, the goal is so the haulers don't have to be too concerned, but the haulers can be a great line of defense. Open the tote, see a bunch of non-compostable things in there. Maybe we keep that from going into the truck before it goes to the facility. How's time, Elly? Am I got a couple minutes or?
Yeah. You've got
Okay.
5.
Yeah, awesome. And so since we're at VORS and we have a lot of composters here and a lot of folks who are involved in that industry, what does CERC look like? Again, controls intended to remove contamination. What does this program look like at the composter level? And, as somebody who previously has managed a food scraps composting facility, I think that there's a potential, and we've had some interest from composters, that they could implement this program and require generators to adhere to the CERC program. So we are willing to collect from you or accept material that comes from a local hauler, collected at your facility, provided you're willing to implement this program, which is essentially just a checklist and checks and balances, and also protections. How do we, if you can't check in the affirmative that you have a policy in place for receiving your food service disposable products in and making sure that everything is compostable and able to go in those bins, then you really shouldn't be trying to divert that, because that's the first step in the process. So this is where we start it. What comes in that back door to the receiving end is the only way we can control what's going to go in the cart. So that's the beginning piece. There's many more pieces we can get to, but again, the composter wouldn't necessarily, only if they wanted to, they don't have to do the implementation. We're also hoping that this will take a little bit of the commitment off of their hands, where, how many of us who've been in the composting industry, you train staff, you train children, you go to schools, you do all these things. As the product manufacturers, we want to take some of that workload off, and also hopefully be able to pull some levers that will keep the contamination down. everything, again, we're trying to get this done before the cart. We want to address it immediately and resolve it before it escalates, before somebody just says, wow, it's gotten so bad, we just can't do this anymore. We want to reduce contamination at the facility level, not at the compost facility. This is the facility being, we want to reduce the contamination at the cafeteria. We want to reduce the contamination in the school. We want to reduce the contamination at the coffee shop so it doesn't get into the car. Support generator training and compliance, kind of like what I mentioned, supporting composters by doing a lot of this work that it's time consuming. Reduce the high cost associated with rejected loads. I know it's always hard to reject a load. You don't want that contamination, but you also don't want to jeopardize the importance that these are your feedstocks coming in. So how do we keep those clean so we don't have to shut the door on those? And maintain and increase access to compost processing for committed waste diversion partners. Who's going to actually do the work so we don't have the contamination? And then I just put in some topics of interest. Again, no pictures. This is the last slide too. I'm sorry. It's like a no-no in the presentation thing, but large generators, picture colleges, picture, the big businesses, even down to, the regional chains, continue to purchase food service packaging products made from renewable resources, many of them certified compostable. This is a trend that I don't think we're going to turn around. I hope that we can continue to educate about, disposable is not always the answer, but how do we work towards, how do we make this all work together? If we're going to buy these products, how do we get them to the compost facility? How do we get them broken down safely and efficiently? Leaf and yard facilities moving toward food scrap acceptance. This is a whole new area of folks that are saying, yeah, let's give this thing a go. The infrastructure's in place. How do we protect them from day one around around contamination? And I think that there's a lot of work to do there, walk before we run kind of deal. Facilities coming online with large capacity and packaging acceptance policies. For example, you need BPI certification or CMA, or you need a third-party certification. It's a great policy, fantastic policy, but it has to be backed up by systems that can make sure, okay, so how do we make sure that that's the only stuff that's going into the cart that's getting in the facility? Eco Products continues to expand our product line, so we offer multiple solutions for multiple markets, different substrates. I would say you could even get into, let's take a CPLA coffee cup lid from David's presentation. Does a paper lid work better? It's going to be PLA line because hot coffee needs something between that and your lips to keep you from, hurting yourself or dissolving in your hands. But are there products that will work better in different situations? I think I don't want to get too much into the hypotheticals, but avoiding depackaging for qualified bedded streams. Depackaging has its place for sure, and there's a lot of research that's going on based on microplastics, organics recovery percentage, and the manufacturers are doing a great job. They're making amazing equipment. But what if we didn't have to use it in the right instances? What if everything we were putting in that bin could truly be composted and broken down? And then celebrating successes together. We have enough failures, but we have a lot of wins too. And I think, I get to work in the Northeast region, Ohio Valley, and our team works across the whole country. We hear often about, facilities that have to, shut off that access, but we also see facilities come online. I wouldn't say daily, but nearly daily, that accept the products. They can, ask questions of teams like David's team at TAWA and Sashti. Let's see what can we learn together and how can we make this all work. So pretty excited about everything to come. Excited that you folks let us still continue to show up and have a good time. We learned so much from events like VORS that we can go back to our teams in product development. We can go back to our advocacy teams and we can figure out how to get better together. So that's all the talking I could do. Hopefully I came in under time and didn't put anybody to sleep. Thank you all.
Great job, Toby. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Toby? Hand raises, cameras on, chat, lots of platforms for you to ask questions. Yeah, Missy, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
I do. It's interesting that it shows up as Missy. I'm Melissa Pennington with EPA Region 3 out of Philadelphia. And since nobody else had any questions, I just wanted to comment on something that was just talked about, and it was leaf and yard waste facilities transitioning to accept food waste. And that didn't seem to fit with the rest of the presentation. And this is something we are very interested in. So I was hoping that the presenter could talk a little bit more about that, maybe about what kind of interest you're seeing, how we, garner support for that idea, what some pathways are to move facilities in that direction.
Certainly. Yeah, thanks. I wear the eco products. Well, I don't have my shirt on today, but I have all the, but I don't only talk about packaging. So, that's something that's exciting about our job. People ask about our positions, and this is like the most amazing position I've had in my whole career, where I get to look at the whole universe of organics management, basically see how the compostable products fit in, but also just get a pulse on the industry. That comment was specifically, I think, from Vermont's neighbor to the west in New York. There's a lot of permitted leaf and yard facilities there. There's a lot of support from the New York I'm gonna DEC or whatever the last letter is. I get them wrong, but
you're correct. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So they have, I think, these are my words, not the words of the New York DEC, but they have if you know what you're doing and you've been successful in that leaf and yard arena, then I think that they're pretty flexible with letting you consider, or maybe even encouraging, I would say, food scrap acceptance, because we don't want to haul these things tens of hundreds of miles, right? If we have a facility that's already there, ready to go, let's see what we can do as far as, expanding feedstock availability. And also it's critical to reaching the goals that folks are putting in place at the city, state, federal, global level. How are we going to divert organics and keep them out of the landfill and manage methane? It's a logical place to start. And I would say if you want, Melissa, my contact info is here, but there's some folks in New York I could probably connect you with. I think that would be able to help you from the policy side and the regulatory side for sure. That wouldn't necessarily be my expertise, other than being at the New York Summit a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
A lot of the folks were there. So it's a great question, though. Yeah,
that would be great. I'll contact you separately. Thanks, Toby.
Sure. And then if there's no other questions, hopefully, I'm curious, because like I said, we come to these to learn. If CERC is completely, everybody's like, what is this guy talking about? That's feedback I'd like to have also, because it's a lot of words and it's a new program for us. But I want everybody to feel confident. It basically means we're here, we're available to help. If you go to the local restaurant and find out, like, wow, this takeout packaging is crazy. Some is plastic, some's paper, some's whatever. You can literally pick up the phone, call Eco Products. You can call Elly at World Centric. You can say, what do I do here? And we'll help you dig in. And because it's work we're passionate about, and appreciate the support. Hi, Deb.
Yeah, I had a question. I'm at University of Vermont, so I know how contaminated our streams can get. And I loved what you presented about the CERC program. How do we motivate people to get involved in that, since it is fairly detailed and involves a lot of collaboration? I feel like some people just give up, saying, "Oh, it's too difficult," or "I don't have time." So how can we motivate people to, really embrace it? Because I'm totally behind it, but I don't know how to get other people behind it.
Yeah, you can send Dan G flowers at his facility up the street, and then you can get together with Corey and possibly tell him you should take a call. Maybe you and Elly and Toby will both come. And essentially, all joking aside, it's very, very difficult work. And I think at UVM, I want to be very careful. It's everything at UVM that the CERC program can help address.
Right.
I'm going to go in this group. I can really go out on a limb and say procurement is a challenge. Procurement is a real, we're recording. I'll be clean. It is hard because, folks, there's somebody that's under strict requirements to come in under budget in every operation. And there is a definite difference in a per piece cost on a certified compostable piece of food serviceware and a traditional piece of plastic that should always go in the trash at this point in time. It's a battle we fight every day. So really it's about just, and I always, humor helps. I don't know how much it helps with composting, but I like to tell people, I've invited so-and-so here, not so we can all brawl in the office here, but because we want to hear all sides. On the best day, we're going to have procurement there. We're going to have folks from the sustainability team. We're going to have the dining services team there. We're going to have facilities in the same room. So 4 or 5, might even have somebody at, who's got the hauling contract. We just get in, we talk it out. What's your biggest challenge? Contamination is a real bear. I think at UVM last time I checked, contamination is probably rough right now, also because there's not a solution for compostable food serviceware going to a facility. And again, we got to solve some problems before that door opens again. So yeah.
Well, it's contamination. I teach compost ecology. We've been doing waste audits each year in collaboration, with Corey, et cetera. And I know just going through that activity, it really enlightens a lot of students to the problem. And then you get like, wow, all these 5 coffee cups look look the same. How do I tell the difference? And then each shop in the student center uses a different coffee cup. So coordination is really key, isn't it?
It's summer, yeah. And then you have the retail where there's big brands that say we're using our coffee cup or no coffee cup, and their coffee cup that they use, and I want to pick on Texas, is different than what we could use in Vermont that might be able to go to a compost facility. So yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of work to be done, but we're all up for the task. So
yeah, thanks for that question, Deb. That is really, I think, the $1 million question, right? And having all of the right people in the room and using that student energy is a really, really, I have found that to work from the bottom up. If the students are asking for it consistently, and I'm sure you've had that experience too, right? That is where I have seen it really really get legs and come into policy change. But it's all about behavior change too, and it's hard. Humans don't like change.
Well, and we really noticed a lot of inconsistent signage, even within a single building and between buildings, and that adds confusion, even if you want to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is kind of actually a really good segue for our final expert and compost industry celebrity, Linda Norris-Waldt. To know her is to love her. And if you have not seen her name in your inbox, then you need to dive deeper into USCC membership benefits and advocacy activity. Linda is the Deputy Director and Director of Advocacy and Chapter Relations for the U.S. Composting Council, which is a national trade organization that advocates for the commercial composting industry. Natasha, could you mute everyone but me, please? And Linda? For 10 years, Linda was the Director of Recycling for Frederick County, Maryland, before crossing fully into organics. She is a key advisory board member with me too. She's more of the key than I am on the Maryland DC Composting Council, a newly developed chapter. And she's also on the Maryland Compost Advocacy Coalition. And in addition to all of that, Linda is also part of the Frederick Compost Work Group, which is a citizen advocacy group for composting and food waste. Linda joins us from Maryland today. And Linda, please go ahead and tie this all together by telling us about the work that the USCC has done around labeling standards.
Great, thank you. And I'm really glad to be here. Natasha, thank you for providing this opportunity. Ever since COVID, I think I remember coming to the first Vermont Organics Summit when there was nothing we could go to at the time. So this is a really great summit to have, and I enjoy it every year. So I wanted to start out, since it's springtime, that if you are having a graduation picnic, a church event, any of those kinds of things, you're likely not going to have enough of your own dishware to make all of the stuff reusable that you put outside in the beautiful weather. And you can work on recyclable materials, aluminum cans, glass jars for mustard and pickles, etc., to realize that compostable may be the way to go when it comes to other types of servingware. So then you end up in the local grocery store, if you're your average consumer, trying to figure out what in the world you should pick, because there are so many labels out there. So many types of things, so many to choose from. What in the world do you do? So that's part of one of two big reasons that I wanted to talk about for success with composters and compostables in this session. So what I'm going to be talking to you about primarily is compostable success needed through building infrastructure, through controlling greenwashing, through education and labeling. And I won't be talking about this in depth because the first two presentations have been focused more on optional conditions for composters. And that's a whole nother story in itself. But mine is coming from policy. So just to do a quick level set, the U.S. Composting Council has been around since the 90s, and that is our mission statement. And we are focused, we are a business trade organization, but we are extremely mission-based. So we have a really unique combination of people who want to have a saleable product, but do good for the planet, for the soils at the same time. And just to give you a quick look at what we look like, we are currently, let's see, I'm looking for my thing. We are currently, actually, I did not update the slide. We are nearly 1,000 members, more than 2,500 individuals represented by those membership types. And you can see the large majority of our members are commercial composters, compost manufacturers, which include public agencies, and then a host of other member types and allies that are in our group. Okay, so I thought to help with the level set, I think I missed a slide. There we go. So this slide is a result of a study that we did with, that was done for us actually by the Environmental Research and Education Foundation. And what I did was just took a snapshot of the facilities. We had about 300 responses out of 2,000 sent out. So a pretty decent response, but the facilities that responded, and you will see that our what we call compost deserts are areas of the country that are in the upper northwest, not far northwest, but Montana, Wyoming, and then areas of the southeast, south central. Those are areas that we are working hard on building infrastructure. One of the big reasons why those deserts exist is you can see how regional landfill tipping fees coordinate with those deserts. If you look at the southeast and the south central, some of the lowest tipping fees in the country. So that is one of our big challenges, is to be sure that things are profitable for composters. And when it comes to compostables, a recent study by Closed Loop Foundation found what most composters know, that about 20% of their operating costs are devoted to dealing with contamination. So that doesn't help when you've got a small profit margin in the first place. Biocycle has done a lot of great work on assessing programs and facilities, and this is their work from last year that they did, where they looked at food waste collection programs by state. And as you can see, those compost deserts just keep popping up over and over again, almost the same states that our study showed, pretty much because programs follow facilities when you think about it. What we have seen, though, is the ability of more and more people in the United States to find a way to compost their food scraps. 14.9 million in Biocycle study are now having access to recycling their food scraps, up from 11.7 in 2017. And then you can see how far back it goes when things just started taking off in about 2009. Oops. I don't know what's going on there. Okay. It took a minute to come in. Okay. So another element of their study that you'll find interesting is the growth in programs just from 2021 to 2023. So in those areas where access is available, people are really signing on, and composters are taking advantage of better conditions in those states where tipping fees are higher, where various regulations are more compost friendly, where there are yard waste facilities where they can convert. I put a thing in the chat where there's a lot more public-private situations happening, where yard waste facilities are in towns that don't want to run a food waste facility, and they tap a professional private sector composter to run it for them. So that is some interesting data just to see how things are growing. And also in their study is included some data. If you go to the study, I should have put the link here, I forgot, but you can see the access to food scraps that are increasing at facilities. And at the time of the study, there was more access to compostable packaging as well going into some of those facilities. But for composters, we have to remember that soil health and a good quality product are the drivers of why most composters get into the business. They need the tipping fees coming into the facility, but they also want a quality product that can be sold for a quality amount of dollars to help them going out. And I thought this was a good place to just pop in the link for our decision-making guide about accepting or rejecting compostable products. If you go to this webpage, you'll see not only that, but some other resources, including access to some webinars and some learning that we did around compostable products a couple of years ago that is really interesting. So here we are. We talked about in 2009, we started to see a ramp up of food scrap collection because there was so much more press about food waste, and composters began to be interested and began to be asked by municipalities to look into taking food waste. They started to see back of house operations, grocery stores, etc., that wanted to compost their food waste. So initially things were going along kind of swimmingly because it was relatively under control. The amounts of packaging coming in were relatively small. They were manageable. People were just learning about how to manage these facilities, but things have changed over the years. And one of the things that we have had to emphasize as they have changed is that we want rotting food. That's basically what we want when it comes to food waste. We really don't compete for edible food, which is for food rescue. We really want inedible food, and we want food for the nitrogen source, not for the packaging. We're happy to take the packaging if it's bringing in a decent amount of food, but it's the food that is really our interest. And what has ended up happening as years have progressed since 2009 is we have situations, I'm sure he's famous to all of you by now, Clinton Sander from A1 Organics, and the campaign that he did last year, actually a year and a half ago, prior to their decision to discontinue taking compostable packaging, when they were doing a big campaign to try to control the contamination that was coming in. And they tried and they tried. It didn't work. They made the decision, but this is what many of our composters are facing right now. And you saw some of those pictures I believe in Toby's presentation as well. So some of the things that we're struggling with may be optimal conditions for breakdown of products that have been tested, but really that's not what we're hearing from composters. What we're really hearing from composters is the problem that they're running into are things that look like they should be compostable, but are not. We're hearing that over and over again. Let's see. This is what happens when you forget that you did these things. So there's just some more pictures of contamination for you to enjoy. So one of the things that we have talked to people about is the fact that packaging industry is if they worked hard to try to have more compostable products that are associated with food, that would be one great way to have us get more food and have the packaging accepted as well, and replace single-use packaging that we are trying to get rid of in the marketplace. And this just here, I was fishing around and I saw this list on the Compost Manufacturing Alliance website, which has some really cool ideas. I believe that the Sustainable Packaging Institute also has a great report where they talk about some of these kinds of items that would be ideal compostables. Whoops, skipped ahead there, but that's where I was headed. So one thing that we have done in the compost industry to try to address these problems is formed a task force that was made up half of compost manufacturers and half of compostable packaging industry representatives. And we worked over an intense, I would say, 5 or 6 months in 2022. And what we did, if you look at the website that is listed at the top there, we came up with a list of principles, things that we all agreed on in consensus were things that we really need in legislation that might that might be around labeling for compostable products. Or it could be in legislation where people are requiring compostable products as a substitute for some other product. And some of them, I've highlighted them so that we don't have to go through every one. You can go through and read them. And there was also a bill on that page, a template bill that we updated from the 2012 model labeling bill that was done by USCC and the Compostable Labeling Task Force that actually Carrie Oceans worked on. But so we've updated some of those things, and some of the most important things are there in green. And one of them is that claims of compostability should be limited to products that are certified compostable by an approved third-party certifying organization. And they should be limited to products that are designed to touch, contain, or carry a food product, scraps, or other organic materials. We're really interested in, number one, not getting things like cell phone cases, tennis shoes, things that are not bringing us food. There may be a day way in the future where that becomes something feasible to look at. But right now, composters have no interest in that. They want the food, and they're willing to deal with the certified, labeled, proper packaging if it has food carried in with it. So those are key principles that we have. There are other principles as well about the colors of bags, of the way to stripe products that are cups and other types of compostables. We prefer in the composting industry, we think green is the most identifiable color to consumers. And we're really focused more on consumers than composters because, like Toby said, these things should be taken care of at the hauling generator consumer level, not when it hits the doors of the composter. So we're really interested in the colors and the things that make consumers put things in the right place. So there's that. And then the other really important one I put in lights at the bottom, which is non-compostable products must be prohibited from using similar labeling schemes, including the use of green, brown, or beige material coloring, tinting, or striping. This, referring back to my comment about lookalikes earlier, is getting the consensus of both the composting and packaging industry as the most important thing. What composters have been dealing with now, especially those who have decided to stop accepting packaging, is the fact that they're getting so much that they can't even tell what's certified and what's not. They're getting so much. If you look back and think about those pictures that we saw, it has just become too much of a hassle for many composters to try to figure that out. Unless they have a program like CIRC or some other great relationship where they have a closed loop, an arena or something where they know everything that's coming in, or a composter who is only composting compostables. I think David mentioned this, that they know will break down in their system. So what we really want to see in these bills, or hopefully one day a national labeling bill, is the ability to go after products that pretend that they're compostable by using terms like biodegradable, plant-based, whatever it is, like you saw in that earlier slide, that is confusing consumers. So that is something that I am seeing every day more and more of a rally around that particular facet. So again, if you go on that website, Colorado has actually done Colorado, California, and Washington are all the most recent states who have done the most recent work in the labeling arena. California and Colorado both have penalties. I believe Washington's bill just put in penalties. I know Heather's on here and she will correct me if I'm wrong. And Maryland has a law, Minnesota has a law. The penalties are not as strong in those laws. So hopefully those will come around with another iteration. And we're hoping that states that are putting in these bills, we have been contacting legislators for the past year and a half with these labeling principles to make them aware of them. So the summary of recommendations that I give to packaging folks when I talk to them, and just so that you composters see what they are, I kept that on here from another presentation, is to support reusable products wherever you can. That's the first step. Don't make it compostable or recyclable if you can make it reusable. Bring us food as composters. That's what we really want. Make things that make sense, like that slide that you saw earlier with the list of the list of things. Incorporate the labeling guidelines. Do it voluntarily. Don't wait for the legislation. Start getting your upper brass if you're in a company. We've told them, some of them are in companies that have conventional and compostable packaging. And we've said, you have got to get to the top brass. If they're going to set these ESG goals, they have got to put real intentionality behind them. So that's where make a commitment at the top is. The people in the compostable divisions of these companies need to be supported at the top. So that is my quick, I hope that maybe I caught us up because I did try to cut out a few slides and keep us on time. So I am open to any questions.
Great, Linda. Yeah, that was amazingly timely. Thank you so much. So at this point, we've got probably a good 5 or 6 minutes for Q&A. So I'd like David and Sashti to come back on camera too and invite you to, let's do hand raises. So we can call on you and you can ask your questions to our presenters. And while we're getting our questions ready in our heads, there was a question in the chat from earlier, and this is open to anyone. Carrie, I think you would be invited to answer this one as well, about the compost accelerator. And that was A. Leacock, if you wanted to expand on that, or if you just want that question. Can you tell us more about the compost accelerator?
Yeah, I think that one was focused for David had said that he includes a compost accelerator in his recipe, if I remember.
Yes. Yeah, so the compost accelerator is just a mixture of like enzymes and bacteria that essentially help break down the either the bioplastic and the sugar pulp. Well, the sugar pulp actually helps accelerate the effect of the accelerator as well. So that's what kind of creates the moisture, creates the heat, creates the moisture. And the recipe is made in house. That's all about I can say about that.
So it's kind of an introduction of the microbiology already to invite the colony to sort of populate a little quicker.
Right. Right.
And that's
is that something that you're purchasing or you're creating? I'm not clear.
No, that's been created in house.
You're creating it, okay.
There was so much good information here. There has to be some great questions.
Come on.
I'll just say it was taken up in chat already a little bit, but there, and I'm hearing more of this from folks that I connect with as well, is confusion around the third-party certifications. And is it BPI? Is it CMA? Are things coming out of Europe or Canada? Where are all the differences and how do you know? And is there an industry standard party to go to, or is it really a suite of things that consumers or procurement offices need to consider? Linda, it looks like you want to jump right in.
Yeah, I can tell it from our perspective, and I don't know if Elly wants to go from the packaging side, but BPI is the widely accepted standard. They do the lab testing, and it's been accepted for decades. What we put into the labeling guidelines is composters are increasingly wanting to do field testing, and we did not require it, but we said we recommend field testing. So Compost Manufacturing Alliance is doing field testing of specific products, and then also the compost field testing program that is by the Compost Foundation is doing work out of Canada, and I can dig up those links and put them in the chat.
Linda, I just added for those who want a real just basic grounding in compostable products, we put together a couple of basic guides for composters. And I just put the link in from the Composting Council website.
Oh, thanks. That was the one I had in the presentation. Yep, that's great.
Yeah, basic primer on what are they, include certifications, and then a kind of a guide for composters to this decision-making guide on whether or not you want to accept them or not. So just a resource for folks.
Toby, did you want to comment.
Yeah, I put it in the chat too, but I think one of the biggest things to consider on the certifications is where is your material going to go after you collect it at your facility. For example, if you're going to divert, you should have that answer before we sell a lot of products based on renewable resources, right? That don't make it to a compost facility. I'm okay with that argument, but generally, if you know where it's going to go, say you're in Massachusetts and you're going to go to Black Earth Compost, for example, you want to talk to the team at Black Earth, ask them what certifications they accept, and don't make any exceptions. If they give you 3 certifications, TUV, BPI, CMA, stick to that. Don't try to, there's no wiggle room there at the composter level. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the questions that I've been getting is from from some restaurants or other, like, so like we were talking about not having it be the composter have to decide, but upstream decision making, right? So from like we were just at Prohibition Pig, and when I was for those of you who were able to join us in person on Monday, and there is an increased awareness and expectation that they provide compostable products if they're not using durables, so like to go or for their whatever it is that they're providing, whether it's flatware or clam shells or plates. And there's just a lot of confusion on that side of who to go to. And I think that's part of what I understand about CERC, and part of what I think is really key to making this whole process work for composters is nudging it upstream, not waiting for a compost facility to say, these are the things. I mean, I think compost facilities also need to say that, what they're willing to take, but there's so much that needs to be done before it even gets to that end facility.
Can I jump in on that one quick, Natasha?
Yeah,
absolutely. And my comment wasn't that the composter should never be the one who's deciding. They should have, that answer should be there. That should have been answered before it gets to the facility. But you bring up a huge, and because we're close to time, I'll open a can of worms. But distribution challenges are probably Elly and I's one of our biggest challenges, because oftentimes there'll be a salesperson involved. I mean, how many restaurants are there just in the town of Waterbury, correct? And how many different distributors are supporting them? You nailed it, Natasha. If you have any question, just reach out to us. And then what we try to do is we have to leverage the needs of the food service operator against the distributors to say, you really need to have these options available for your customers, who are also our customers, to be able to make this work. And that can be, we can't make progress there. And back to sort of the UVM comments and other comments, is if all of us get together, like Elly mentioned, the students at the colleges or the patrons at the restaurants, say, how do we fix this? We can also then try to take it out of the restaurant owners' hands. They're busy too. They don't want to have to worry about this. But let's just say I may know the distributor that services Pro Pig. Maybe the call already went in. I don't know. But we'll keep working. We'll keep trying to make that happen. So.
Excellent. Yeah, it just kind of freaks me out when, I actually had a nonprofit that has a cafe, and when Green Mountain Compost stopped taking compostable products at their facility, this was in Chittenden County, 2 of the 6 board members of this nonprofit were like, let's save money and go back to styrofoam. And I was like, that's illegal. Let's not do that. Like, we're not doing that in Vermont anymore. But this is right. These are the people making decisions. And this is where people, it feels so confusing and overwhelming. They're just like, the impulse seems to be, let's go back to what we were doing 50 years ago, or however long ago that was. And so I just want to, it's great for I so appreciate what USCC is doing really within the compost industry. But like Toby, you were saying, everyone needs to be at this table, right? Everyone needs to really get involved and help be a part of the solution. I'm sorry, I feel like I just sort of brought all of that around, and now we're out of time, but I saw nodding heads and not a bunch of other questions in the chat. So I will just quickly, I'm not going to put up a closing slide, but I will just thank Elly, and all of our presenters and participants for coming today. Such rich information, a lot to think about, and just a lot of work to do. So hopefully I saw in chat some networking and some contact information exchange, and that's wonderful. Today's program is going to continue at 1 o'clock with a very provocatively titled session, Decoding the Compost Conundrum, Navigating Contaminants and Crafting Sustainable Solutions. And so we hope some of you will be able to join us back for that conversation, because just as we've been talking about some of the contaminations and issues with compostable packaging, those show up in different places. Like David even mentioned, you know, PFAS, like how do we track these things back and put some stopgaps in place? And so with that, thank you all for your time and attention and participation and engagement. And I hope to see you back in a couple hours.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thanks so
Great job.
much.
Call me,
Thank you
everybody.
all.